first annual general meeting of the CATS Foundation. I won't say much about it because our plan is to have a couple of speakers, and we're very fortunate to have not only Daniel, who with Patricia set up the CATS Foundation about a year ago, it's about 15 months ago, and have really done extremely well with raising some awareness and publicity and funds. But also we're very fortunate to have one of the world's leading experts on inborn errors of metabolism and lysosomal disorders in Professor Timothy Cox, who's just catching his breath after hot-footing it from Cambridge. He is in fact Professor of Medicine at the University of Cambridge. He's also a consultant physician at Addenbrooke's Hospital and a fellow of Sydney Sussex College at Cambridge. He's done extensive work and research and published many articles on inborn errors of metabolism and lysosomal disorders, of which Tay-Sachs, which our children or grandchildren suffer from, is one of those diseases. He's also, and I'm in awe of this, a co-author of the Oxford Textbook of Medicine. For those of you not in the medical world, this is our standard textbook. It's the book that every medical student has under his pillow. We also are very fortunate in having Katrina Sarig, who's one of the executive directors of the Jewish Genetic Disorders, of which there's a very close link with study and understanding of the genetics of Tay-Sachs disease, and she'll be able to maybe afterwards during the Q&A answer some questions for you about screening and so on that we might like to touch on. And we're also fortunate in that we have a couple of other patrons. We have Julia Ogilvie, who's one of our patrons and supporters as well, sitting there, for which we're indebted. It's a pleasure. Without much ado, I'm going to hand over to Daniel while Professor Cox tries to figure out what he's going to say. And he'll tell you all about the charity and what they've achieved.
So I just want to say thank you everyone for coming down today. It's exciting for us. It's been 15 months since we started the CATS Foundation, and we've grown at a rate faster than we thought was possible. So today I wanted to talk to you basically about us, the charity, and why we started it, how we help people affected by Tay-Sachs, our progress in the last 15 months, the fundraising activities we've undertaken, and then the future for the charity and the direction we want to go in. So, who's the CATS Foundation? Why was the charity started? Basically, when our daughter Emily was diagnosed back in March 2011, like James and Deborah at the same time, we searched on the internet trying to find out a support network in the UK. There wasn't really anything specific for Tay-Sachs. There was CRIME, which was a kind of generic metabolic disorder charity, but nothing really that focused on Tay-Sachs. We wanted that support network and that up-to-date information. So we were searching for information, and I only found the NTSAD in the US, which is a great charity, but really focuses on children affected by the disease there. There's nothing in the UK. So we had a meeting with Professor Cox, James, Deborah. We decided that we should start a Tay-Sachs specific charity, which is how the CATS Foundation started. And having set the charity up, we had to set certain objectives. That's kind of a legal requirement. So our objectives are quite clear. We support the research for public benefit into the disease, provision of a support network, and finally, we purchase equipment not available on the NHS. We're fortunate with the NHS that a lot of things that the children require is provided, but there are some add-ons that is either seen, I hate to say the word luxury, but sometimes they won't supply a pram cover, that sort of things, where the charity can step in. Plus, if you're not happy, people aren't happy with the kind of seating option given to them by their OT, that's what we can step in and provide that piece of kit that you may want. So our aims are quite clear. We want to raise awareness of Tay-Sachs to the wider community. We want to provide an online resource centre and undertake fundraising activities. So for a charity, you have to have a board of trustees. Okay? We have 5 trustees. And all the trustees, their role is to ensure we always meet our charity objectives. So if we go off book a bit on what we want to do, they're the ones who rein us in and say this isn't appropriate, or you're planning on spending too much money there. They're involved in all the funding decisions. So any money, you should know that all the money that's raised isn't just gone and spent on things we think people want. We will have a proper meeting, sit down and discuss what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. So, who are the trustees? It's myself. It's Patricia, who's very good at organising everything. She kind of gets most things done for us. It's my sister Kate. She actually works in the charity environment at the moment, and she also has a legal background. So she helps us a lot in the legal documents we may need to prepare. We then have Dan at the back as a trustee. He works in audit, so he has a very good analytical mind. And then Llewellyn, unfortunately can't make it today, but he works in the financial service industry and he's very good with numbers and helps us with accounting. So, kind of timeline highlights for the charity itself. June 2011 was when we had the initial meeting with James, Deborah, Patricia, Prof Cox and his team. It was there that we decided that there was space for a Tay-Sachs specific charity. It was just a case of starting it. So, June 2011, we received our first donation. Quite simply, we just set up a PayPal account and people started donating. And then we launched the website in July 2011 with the help of Steve at the back there, who's done a lot of the IT with me, kind of establishing an online presence. In September 2011, it was the first family we helped with a child affected by Tay-Sachs. And in October 2011, we'd already hit the £10,000 mark in money received. In November 2011, we got our charity commission registration, which is quite a long process of legal documents we had to prepare. And in June 2012, we made our first donation to Prof Cox's team. And in August 2012, we hit 50,000.
Hearing your name, hearing your name.
How we help? Most of you have received some sort of help from the charity itself. It's quite a simple process. If you want something, you just speak to us, or we may suggest something. You will get back to us with a yes or a no. If there's something you want, we then just go on to our trustees, who usually get the approval of the costs within a day. And then from there, the equipment's obtained, and it takes about a month. That's our simple process on how we will help people. Okay. The equipment we've provided so far. We've provided swings, Isabella. Provided alternative seating with a tumble form chair that a few of them got. The car seats. And the sensory toys. It's really good. We've also provided pram accessories and accessories at home.
Hearing your name, hearing your name.
Our progress. This is the exciting bit. Since we started, we've raised £95,000, which is a huge effort. And today I've actually received a few more checks, and I think we've just hit over 100,000, which is, for 15 months is a huge target for us. We've been amazing. Our outgoing is at 32,000, and I'll explain why the number is appears so much lower than the incoming. So in year 1, year 2, you'll see our incoming was 34,000, and our years run from July to June. And then since 1st of July 2012 till today, we've raised 60,000. So there's been, I think we're saying, about 75% increase in the last 3 to 4 months in our funding compared to last year, which has shown that the going out there, raising awareness, getting our name out to people to undertake fundraising activities for us is working. Now, our outgoing appears small compared to our incoming. That's because when we set up the charity, we have to state how we go about our funding. So we initially said, year 1 and 2 will be combined in our funding. We will try and spend what we made in year 1. So we're going to hit the £30,000 mark at the moment, maybe a bit more by the end of the year. That then leaves us on target to work out our future spending for the following years based on what we've earned. So that's kind of how we're working things out. And this is our expenditure so far. So there's admin costs, there's events. Event costs are then we get back from the event itself. Family help, merchandise, and the research donation. So this is where the money's gone. A lot of it's gone on to the sensory toys, alternate seating. This will increase by next year and year. Our plan is to help as often as much as we can. We initially set a limit on how much and how often, but now we do it on a case-by-case basis. So if you need something, you just contact us.
Hearing your name, hearing your name.
Our progress in the media has been really good. We've had some good exposure. We've appeared across multiple media outlets. It's ranged from local and national press. We've appeared in newspapers, magazines, on TV and also online. So some of our press appearances, the Evening Standard, which kind of promoted the charity and what our fundraising aims were. And there's a small little article. In March 2012 we appeared on Sky Sports. We were introduced, Danny and I ran a marathon and finished at Wembley. You probably saw the clip. We introduced 80,000 people, which is really good. And in April we appeared on the BBC News, which is good. And in Runner's World magazine recently, the Cats 10K Challenge I'll talk about later on was reviewed. We've had a really good uptake of people signing up for that challenge since the article was published. So other press appearances include the Bury Free Press, Jewish Chronicle, Saracen's website, the South End Echo, Essex Chronicle, and there's also been a few.
Hearing your name, hearing your name.
Our fundraising activities. I've done the highlights of some of the things we've done. So in July 2011, this was the very first fundraising event for the charity. It's three of us, we raised about £150. It's the first thing we did. And then this was our first mass participation event. We had about 30 runners just running a 5k race, which was brilliant. We did a charity football game, which James came down and played in as well. It's the first time we raised over £1,000 for one individual event. And that was the first event outside London, the Halloween party. That's St David's Day run. It was the first event outside England, which is significant. And then the Billericay run is something my brother and I are going to try and hold annually. Just people in the local area just can run a variety of distances and just kind of pay £25 to take part. Three Peaks Challenge is quite a popular challenge that people undertake. These guys did it for us. And this was one of the talks I've given to the schools. Martingale Primary School I've been in a couple of times. And they've actually taken part in a season's greetings card competition where I've asked all the children to come up with a design for a Christmas card, which I've got at home. We've chosen the winner and I go in next week to announce that, and then we'll be getting those printed, and then hopefully everyone here will buy them and send us a Christmas cards. Liverpool Marathon, there were about 7 of us who ran that. And then this was our big first annual golf and dinner dance, which my brother and my dad put on. We raised over 15,000, which is great. And then some other events we held, people have taken part in. Some more. There's Amelie's nursery Zoom. I've done quite a lot of fundraising for us. And charity football game again. And then there's the quiz at the hospital. So here's the Cats 10K Challenge. The plan here, it's been going since July, is we're getting someone different to run 10k for us every single day. It's worked constantly. It's been a huge success. So if you can take part, just sign up.
Hearing your name, hearing your name.
And now the future. We want to expand our funding to families. At the moment, we were kind of limited on the amount we could spend, but the increase in the funding recently allowed us to expand that. We want to offer respite holidays. One of the objectives we set at the beginning was that we would offer respite holidays, but at the time we didn't have enough money to be able to go and offer that to people. We have a trustee meeting planned in December where this will be discussed in greater depth, but the idea is we will probably either have a set amount or a location where we will offer you the families to go away, just to have a break. So we know how difficult it is, to get away. Everyone will help with that. We also want to offer respite care at home, and how that, or what you want, people just come to us with suggestions. If you want someone to come once a week or once a month to help out at home, you just tell us and we can explore how we can go with that funding. I think it's important, having been affected by the disease as well, is that having like a care plan for parents. I think that's something that needs to be explored, that we're all also looked after and helped, because it's a difficult time obviously for the children. We also need to be able to get our space. And then provide funding for end-of-life costs. Patricia's mentioned this to a few of you. This is something we're going to help out with. The amount, again, when we have the trustee meeting, we'll discuss. But the idea here is that the majority of that's taken care of, so you don't have to worry about that. So another thing we want to do is increase the community awareness. So more presentations on Tay-Sachs and the charity going out to schools, fundraise within our community and your community and as many communities so they're aware of just the disease and the charity. And it raise awareness of Tay-Sachs. So at the moment we have certain schools and nursery partners. So we have Nightingale Primary School, where I've been in a few times, and the children have been involved in the charity. Zoom Nursery have done lots of fundraising for us. And then Trinity School in Lee, which John's here as the deputy head, which I'm looking forward to. So they're doing a carol concert in December. The plans are for me to also go into the school and give a talk. And then we're going to explore some more fundraising opportunities with them and more awareness raising in the future, in 2013. Continue awareness. We're going to explore some corporate sponsorship. That's something hopefully we can obtain. Arrange more fundraising activities and keep everyone up to date with as much information as possible about the research that's being undertaken, about the fundraising that's happening, and then if you have a question, come to us and we'll try and find the answer you need. That's the plan. Thank you. And that's it.
Now, I did see material from a child with Tay-Sachs disease when I was an undergraduate. And subsequently in life, having done lots and lots of things and got interested in diseases which often get neglected because they're so rare, I started to become interested in therapeutic research, having spent a lot of my life trying to work out what went wrong with diseases, which is very interesting and very important. But as I got a bit soft-brained and started teaching too many students and couldn't find out any more about the causation of disease, I decided actually the right thing to do was to try and develop treatments for disease from our laboratory and colleagues in our labs in Cambridge. And Tay-Sachs disease, which from that time, end of the 19th century, has taught us a lot. And I think actually it could teach us a great deal more. So it's the first lysosomal disease of its kind to be described. And I'll come on to the lysosome in a moment. But it's a little compartment within the cell that's crucial for keeping the cell clean and swept and functioning. It's a recycling compartment, actually. And although Tay-Sachs disease is very threatening and, as you know, very worrying and very disturbing, the extraordinary thing is that the way you can complement, the way you can put things back into lysosomes that aren't quite functioning very well is remarkable. It is very accessible to correction. Just as we give insulin to young diabetics, and I have several close to me who lack insulin, and you can make insulin, and you can control the diabetes very effectively. So it is you can replace a missing factor, for example, an enzyme, in the lysosome that doesn't quite work over a lifetime. So it does show a progressive and relentless effect on pretty well every transistor, every little neuron of the body. And that is very tough, and I think we all know that. It is a very heterogeneous condition. There are 70-year-olds with Tay-Sachs disease, would you believe? They're very rare, but late onset forms, juvenile forms, so-called. It's just a classification to make it easier for doctors to know what's what, you know, type 1, type 2, type 3. Early, juvenile, and late. It's just operational. But actually, we have seen children, 5, 3, 13, with just a new onset of disease, and a 20-year-old. It has ethnic and historical factors, and now there's been screening in the Jewish population for many years, which has effectively, from the 1970s, once the enzyme defect was found, enabled people of known Jewish ancestry to reduce the likelihood that this condition would occur. That has taken the focus off it, I think, a bit, and everyone thinks it's over and done with. It doesn't occur anymore. But what they don't understand is that it's no respecter, and that every group is at risk from getting this condition. I'm sorry, this is probably what I'm saying is a bit tough, but you want me to be open, I hope. So there's tremendous variety of the condition. In the very young, in the little children, teenagers sometimes, and the elderly. And it can look like neurological diseases that clever neurologists think are called motor neurone disease, or ataxia, and various spinal cerebellar ataxias that actually turn out to be an adult onset form of Tay-Sachs disease. Again, it's no respecter, but it crops up from time to time. And it occurs in British Asians with a high frequency, actually. And there was effective screening. Later genetic screening is available, and probably not available enough, but it has been available for at-risk groups for some time. We do know exactly what causes it. We know that genetic defects in one or two loci of the 22,000 genes that we all have are responsible. It's very clear that a mutation in a gene is very likely to cause Tay-Sachs disease, and that enabled us to look at models of disease and to generate models of disease. One of my friends in Cambridge, Martin Evans, pioneered embryonic stem cells, and John Gurdon this year did another kind of stem cells. They both got the Nobel Prize. So disease prevention, just to refresh your memory. So in Ashkenazi Jews, those are Jews of German, Polish, Eastern European, Russian origin. There are two types. Sephardic Jews tend to be in North Africa, Italy, Spain, and so on. Were kicked out, of course, in 1492 by Isabella and Ferdinand. However, Columbus was probably a Jew, and he was a clever man. So many others too. So the Ashkenazi Jews, the frequency from the Eastern Europe of the mutation is about 1 in 27. It is 1 in 27, that's a bit accurate. Which meant that 1 in about 3,000 live births of Jews unscreened and not taking advice, or not unable to get access to advice, would be affected. And hence the Jewish Chronicle and many of the charities have a very strong Jewish history, which of course makes them very fine charities, because there's a tremendous tradition of charitable work and getting things sorted out. But in Irish Americans, you can see the gene frequency turns out to be quite high. And in French Canadians and the French-speaking Cajun people of Louisiana, they also have a high frequency of Tay-Sachs disease. In most persons who don't know that they have this ancestry, it's still found, but it's rarer, which means the condition appears very rarely. And it's found in the Iberian Peninsula as well, and southern France. So disease prevention is important, and of course, young ladies who are expecting, who know they might be at risk because of their heritage, will want to take advice so that they don't run into trouble. And this is available now, and prenatal diagnosis is also advice. And it was all pioneered by a wonderful man called Michael Kavak, who was a young pediatric doctor who got entangled in a way, with a family in a hospital when he was an intern, and decided to take this and run with it, and pioneered screening across the world very effectively for this condition, but not quite effectively enough, perhaps. So millions of people, over 1 million people have been screened, with effective termination for those who would accept termination, and effective prevention of marriage for those that use rather refined ways of making sure that families don't bring diseases in. So this is just the range, you see, of this condition. It's called GM2 gangliosidosis. We're talking about the rarity of Tay-Sachs, and 1 in 300,000, 360,000 births approximately in non-at-risk populations. And so it gets forgotten. But if again you look at the lysosome in terms of when lysosomal diseases, and there are 70 known, all the components of the lysosome are at risk, you begin to understand how important these diseases are. So in the UK, it's now been prolonged for about 15 years, we've had a survey of progressive neurodegeneration in children. This was after the terrible scare with Jakob Creutzfeldt, with new variant Jakob Creutzfeldt disease, mad cow disease. And the terrible scare that all our children were going to be troubled by this. And so there's a long-term follow-up of all UK children who are under paediatricians being treated for and followed with progressive neurodegeneration. And there are a lot of them. And Nick Smith, who works with me, is now in Adelaide, and Chris Verity got together. So Chris Verity is a paediatric neurologist in Cambridge, now retired, who runs this project. And I thought, what we've got to do is to find out what's what. So of the 1,164 children in the UK over this time in which a diagnosis had been made, and of course a large number which a diagnosis has not been made, 45% of them have a lysosomal problem. That's staggering. And of that, it gives an idea of the importance, and of that, 14% there have GM2 gangliosidosis, Santoff disease, Tay-Sachs disease. This is the importance. You don't all come together except through what Dan and Patricia has done. You wouldn't know each other. You wouldn't know about this, actually. It's just a thing that's faded into the past, or been screened for, and everything.
Did you say that's diagnosed as well?
That's the diagnosed ones, yes.
There are some people who aren't
Of course.
diagnosed, so that's why the number could be even greater.
Oh, absolutely. Got to think of it, and it's important. Well, you particularly got to think of that because it's helpful for the family in family planning, and also because there may be treatments. We hope. That's what we're about. Thank you, Dan. I know you feel very rightly, very, very passionately about this. So that's the breakdown. Now, so for very rare diseases, there's no commercial interest in developing treatments. And unless it's something very simple, it's an empty medicine bottle. Until quite recently. In the United States, there was something called the Orphan Medicinal Act, Orphan Medicines Act, and that came in Europe about 13 or 14 years later. And this does give a stimulus to develop non-profit-like or possibly profit-motivated medications by companies. It gives them advantages, tax relief, indeed exclusivity in a market if they ever get into there. And in my other disease I've worked on in this way very much, Gaucher disease, where there are several licensed treatments, the maximum number of patients worldwide is 6,000 on treatment. But in fact one of the companies turned it into a blockbuster therapy which was paid for. Now that's a very good example, and everyone wants to catch up with it. It requires a bit of modification because the cost per patient is extremely high, but the overall budget's very small because there are so few of them. Different way of thinking, what you do in civilized society. Developing realistic therapies, we've got to work with you. Try and get this right. Rescue or salvage. There are very, very few treatments in medicine that cause a reversal of a disease. It's extremely unusual. Antibiotics for inflammation, yes, they do. most of medicine is patch up and repair, apart from surgeons who cut horrible things out. And they do, they often cure, but it's sometimes a bit crude, but they often cure. Yes. Well, I don't know. We're not in. You're obviously a very remarkable surgeon, but the reversing things. Can you reverse things? Very, very difficult. Can you stop things getting worse? Sometimes you can. Can you reduce the rate of decline? Sometimes you can. I know that of the people around this table, all of you would do anything to improve things, and you'd do anything to stop things getting worse. And you'd probably do almost anything, provided it was safe, to reduce the rate of decline, because that's a human thing. As a parent, we are parents. Getting this right is important. Restoring function would be very important. Arresting disease, as we say, attenuating the rate of decline, and preventing disease. Pre-symptomatic or early symptomatic intervention, or better genetic screening and awareness, we've got to do in any event. DNA change, but we don't know enough. So, the mantras for gene therapy in the brain. It doesn't matter where you come from. If you're in a Huguenot's house in the East End, or you're in a ghetto, these diseases are no respecter, and they serve as a fantastic example of what we should be doing if we could do anything at all. And I hope that's some explanation of something you wanted to know and what we're about. Most of what you do, it seems to me, should be for you, for looking after the families and looking after your children. But I know that you'll want to do something as well. Sometimes it's different. And if you want to do something and there are other treatments you wanted to explore, or you wanted to get in touch with other experts in the field, I don't want to dominate you, but very happy to put you in touch with them. But this is what we've done anyway for the moment. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Amazing. It's very good. But if there's any questions you want to ask Daniel about the charity, or Tim about Tay-Sachs and the current therapies.
How many Tay-Sachs children are there in the UK at the moment?
You would know better than me. I've never really asked.
It's possible. It really is, because we would say that we have currently, we say Tay-Sachs and Sandhoff, that we know of about 11. It's about 11, you know. But that's current. There's obviously we've got members who have been affected previously by the disease, but then you have to times that number by 2 or 3, I think, because it's, you know, you get the biggest problem I think we've encountered is you get the diagnosis and you sat down, child has Tay-Sachs, terrible, it's very rare. There's 1 to 2 a year, or 1 to 2 suffer from this, and you go away and you think it's just so rare. And when you start actually looking into it, you realise no, you know, there's 5, 6, maybe a year being born.
Yes.
You know, and then you realise that the data that you're being given is only from your region. So for us in London, it's up to, I think it's up to Cambridge and then down kind of to Southampton. So the data we're given from the doctors is just for that region. We're not seeing anything from South West or Wales or the North East or the North West. So you have to think.
The diagnostic labs will be able to help you.
Yeah, it's trying
to write.
Obtain that information to get a true number, because I think it's much higher, much higher. But getting that information is the problem at the moment.
And the diagnosis may not be made. You know, it's quite.
Again,
the diagnosis can easily be missed. You've got to do the test. The white cells and the plasma has to get to the right lab at the right time in the right form.
Yeah, when we were diagnosed with Luca, the doctor, the first thing they said to contact you.
Yes,
as
that's
per
correct.
So I suppose if anyone else is being diagnosed, like in the years to come, the first thing the doctor will say, you better contact the cat farm.
Yeah,
so you will know probably before anybody else.
Which is why it's such a fantastic thing
Yeah,
to
that's
set up the
why
charity,
we-
because
that's
when
what
we
we
were
done in the first
diagnosed,
place, yeah.
Emily,
Yeah, that's
there
what
That
was
was
no
hard
one.
all this, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think like in the future, like obviously somebody else has a kid, he's got Tay-Sachs, they say, what we gonna do? The doctor will say, we can't do much, but you can bring these organizations really.
Was your final diagnosis done, if you know what I mean? Like Luke had a muscle biopsy and within 3 weeks we had the results of that and it was conclusive. But I wondered if
Not the usual way to make a diagnosis.
Isabella had saw an ophthalmologist who saw the cherry red
Yeah.
spot, and then further blood tests were taken. She'd had EEGs and a CT scan,
Yeah.
and was due to have an MRI, but we didn't need to get that far because it was from a blood test.
That's the same with Emily. It was
You can be more splenetic about it,
Were you,
the way
were
the
you
diagnosis
worried
It was
about
diagnosis.
her eyesight, or was she just having a...
No, it was we'd seen a neurologist.
Yeah.
Who felt that there was a neurological problem and had in the pipeline to see an ophthalmologist, possibility of an MRI, possibility of a lumbar puncture. Obviously, to see the ophthalmologist is probably the cheapest and the less
Yeah.
intrusive,
Yeah.
so it was done first. She'd had a
This,
blood
this
test
was a whole
before.
process over 6 months
Yeah.
from start to
That
finish.
was
pretty-
for us,
that's
that
pretty
came
good.
out
Yeah.
after Luke had been diagnosed with, they double checked everything.
Yeah.
Eye test.
that
But then
should be the
Isabella's
first thing.
presentation was probably very different to
Yeah.
Lucas. So.
I think with the metabolic things, they how it works is they rule things. They look at things to rule things out. So the ophthalmology look at the cherry red spot it's not invasive.
No.
It takes about 5 seconds. It's a yes or a no, and if they see it, then they can start narrowing down. And they know already what they're looking at, which is one thing that when a child goes to the GP and displays the sort of early Tay-Sachs symptoms, it should be the first thing the GP does is refer them off. The problem we've had,
But they don't know, perhaps is it?
this is the problem, and I can't remember whose paper it was. Was it your paper about
Beg your pardon.
the early diagnosis?
GP.
The most important thing is that for quality of life, which is the issue that we all need to address it, you need to get the diagnosis as early as possible. And those where the diagnosis is done early, everything seems to happen better. I mean, for Emily, an example was we had the care. She was diagnosed very quickly. She had stopped. She was sitting and she just suddenly stopped kind of walking and was reluctant to crawl. Took her to the GP, and our GP is very good at referring her straight down to hospital, and they were very good at sending straight over to a specialist that day. And they did the check for cherry red spot and basically the metabolic thing, and then did the blood test. But from that, the care for Emily was good in that everyone was put in place at OT, physiotherapy, but more importantly, it was speech and language, because we all know the swallow is going to go, so they're going to need some form of feeding. And we had a video fluoroscopy, which is where they just had a look at Emily's swallow back in January, and she was eating fine. She put on weight on, but they said her swallow's gone ever so slightly, and she's aspiring a bit of food with dribble occasionally. If we intervene now, the benefit in the future is going to be tenfold. She's going to have no chest infections because of this. She'll continue to weight gain. You won't have the struggles of feeding, which is quite common. And so, if you get the early diagnosis, you can have those things in place, and you know that's going to happen. So, by the time Emily had her peg done, we'd already come to terms with the fact one day it was going to happen. We didn't have this thrown at us. A lot of people get the late diagnosis, they're struggling to deal with that. Then they're told your child can't eat properly, they need to have this done. Then they need to wear splints, then they need to wear lycra for posture, and you have it all thrown at you. So within, I would say, 5 months or 6 months, you need early diagnosis is the way, and the thing we need to kind of promote, and it's what ophthalmology really can do a very simple test, and it's so easy for them to do, and that's kind of the first step.
Not the classic infantile, which would be earlier to display symptoms because children are not hitting their milestones. But in cases like when they're not past, like Isabella and Emily, and then the juvenile is not only not starting to hit some milestones, but sometimes they'll just start losing things suddenly.
That's the classical thing, you're right. It's
And
the
then
regression.
suddenly
And
you
they
just
look-
realize something is going on.
Yes.
But we've also heard cases of children here with Sandhoff and
Yes.
Tay-Sachs Juvenile, where they've been thinking that their child had autism for 4 or 5
Oh, yeah.
years.
Oh, it's
Yes.
very
To
common.
then be hit.
Now that's an extremely rare disease, but not as rare as you think. And
Yeah.
the diagnosis, because they don't have cherry red spots.
And it's just
It's only really
awful.
seen in the infantile variant, and the diagnosis there is very, very delayed.
Difficult.
And in fact, sometimes it can present with stuttering alone. What they look for, and what is so important, is the loss of skills. Things gained, lost. So in that trial, quite a few things could be said. So in that survey, natural history study, if the child never sat up if the child did not sit up by 6 months or a year, I think the number was, it would never sit up. Nearly all of those in the infantile type who were sitting up at 6 months were not sitting up a year later. There were some very, very sort of truthful things that were happening, basic truths that were coming out of there. Loss of skills and words learned, loss of sentence speaking, loss of identification or finding mums. That's a loss of eye contact, loss of fixation. Mums know, of course, grannies often know. Those are things which it's important for us to keep educating going on about. And it applies to so many of the diseases. All the diseases. So the muscle biopsies for mitochondrial diseases, which are the other half of the progressive degeneration. And you can make a diagnosis from muscle biopsy, a pretty long way around to do it. But the other half of neurodegenerative diseases would be found, they affect the mitochondria largely, and they are diagnosable as well. I don't know how we can put this right without making a siege mentality of horrible resistance. I don't know how we can improve this. I think it's good communication, good dialogue, the more knowledge, more skills, and the genericizing from the very rare Tay-Sachs and Sandhoff, which is my life's work. So I'm right with you. And say, is it the same for Gaucher? Yes, they have exactly the same. Is it for all the 8 porphyrias? Yes, it's exactly the same for that. Is it for the 20 fatty chain acid? It's all the same for that. The same resistance, the same difficulty of the diagnosis. And the answer is, it is just very, very difficult. And however encyclopedic we are, we don't know everything.
I mean, that's the problem. Rare diseases are rare, common diseases are common, and we spend 99.99% of our time dealing with common diseases. And when rare diseases come up, I mean, whether it is a metabolic or whether it's a very rare tumour, it takes us forever to get the diagnosis. Isn't that what Daniel and the charity want to do? Is also have a focus on what you can do for the parents who are almost excluded because it's such a rare disease. I know from our experiences as doctors in a hospital, you tend to focus on the rare disease and not on the patient who suffers from it. And you tend to focus on the baby with Tay-Sachs and use it as a teaching model, but forget that there are parents looking after the baby. And what you guys have got to do in this charity is have some parental focus as well, in that you're having to deal with this. You're having to deal with the delayed diagnosis, the prolonged problems of care, the lack of respite care, and that's what you should be talking about as well, apart from
the parental care plan. No, I mean, that's one thing I want us to explore next year. But obviously we'll speak to everyone individually about, from day one to that day, how well you feel you've been looked after is the wrong word, and trying to make you the centre of attention is not what it's about. But we all had to put together care plans for our children. We all need people to know this is what happens when this happens, what something happens, what they need, the feeding, everything.
Very good.
But from having spoken to other people who've gone through the whole process, once the child has gone, it's just kind of a bit like, not washing their hands, but suddenly there's no need for you to see the nurse. Emily had a really good community nurse, Rebecca. She did everything. We would call her up, she would get things done, basically deal with all of our problems. She'd come to hospital, families in hospital to see her. But she moved on to a new job. And it's been weird that suddenly we don't have that contact.
It's a matter of luck, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is what's happened to other families, that they suddenly have lost these people being such a massive part of their life. And yet we understand, obviously, that for a nurse or someone else, they see lots of different people. But for us, as individuals, they create quite an important role. I want to look at developing some form of care plan so people know kind of what we as parents need, what would be useful, and what you would like. You know, some people respond really well to having counselling, some people don't. Some people really respond well to a child spending nights into a hospice. Some parents can't even go to the hospice with a child. And it doesn't make them a bad parent or them refusing a service, it's because they as an individual can't cope with that. And they need to be supported at that, rather than seeing, well, if they can't be bothered, then that's it. We'll cut them off out of that service. So that's something we really want to start exploring when we're kind of getting a care plan for the parents. And that people are aware.
I'm just wondering about this, I'm just thinking about this, some of the things you've been saying, and about the DVD that My Friend Clive has done, which you've seen and you've seen, which is, it's really aimed at doctors and paediatricians and things, and from a sort of parental perspective, I suppose, but also thinking about the care, the whole issue of end of life and that kind of thing. And it's really powerful, and she's been showing it at conferences all over America. She just sent me this morning, so she's just been talking to another 80 paediatricians, you know, and her background is a mother of a Tay-Sachs child who happened to be in the TV producing world, so she just decided to do that. But actually it has been incredibly powerful. I'm just thinking, you know, that could be a way to think about doing something, you know, because I don't know how well that, I mean, that's a slightly specific area, and particularly it's to do with sort of end of life plans and things, and helping doctors. Well, it's also to do with really helping doctors see how to treat and work with parents, and, you know, better, because it's part of it's an interview with their paediatrician, doctor. But I just wonder whether you know, because it's all very well perhaps saying it's good for parents to feedback, you know, to forums, but actually if you could have a short film or something, really show the parents' perspective and have a sort of positive feel, you know, rather than, as you say, sort of explaining the negative things, but then with positive suggestions and, you know, talking to doctors who thought this through. Maybe that would be a really good thing to do. And it wasn't expensive to do that film, it was just filming. And I don't know if you've got contacts in that world or anything, but just might be something to think about spending some of the money on, possibly. And then, you know, if you're involved in a big hospital, you can give it, you know, they will have forums, won't they, for people getting together, or local GPs getting together. So